Welcome back, everyone. In this video, we're going to talk about Chapter 2 in your textbook, Verbal and Nonverbal Communication. Just like the last one, we'll start off with the agenda for this video. First, we're going to talk about verbal communication, then nonverbal communication, and we're going to wrap up with talking about the distinction between the content layer and the relational layer of messages. We'll start with verbal communication. And first we'll define it. So verbal communication is both our words and verbal fillers like and like and things like that. So it's created through language, and effective communication involves accurate interpretations of others' verbal messages. In our verbal communication, we'll often use symbols, which serve as both communication and mental tools to construct meaning. Therefore, this construction of meaning is also symbolic, and it is essential to collaboration in business and professional contexts. So therefore, we have communication rules, which are shared understanding of what communication means and what constitutes as appropriate communication given the context. Within that, we have regulative rules, which describe when, how, where, and with whom to talk about certain things. So we must be able to monitor our own appropriateness when communicating, especially in a work setting. You wouldn't want to talk about how you went out to the bar, the club with all your friends the night before and got messed up in the morning when you come to work. We also have constitutive rules, which define what communication means by prompting us to count certain kinds of communication. Some examples of what I mean by this are giving me eye contact as a sign that you're paying attention to me. We express affection through kissing and hugging, and some communication behaviors that we consider inappropriate would be interrupting someone when they're speaking or rolling our eyes at someone. So now we're going to talk about nonverbal communication. So nonverbal communication is the communication other than written or spoken language that creates meaning for someone. So this is also known as body language and constitutes as all the ways we communicate without words. I think your textbook says there's something like 55% of our messages are nonverbal. So it's important not to underestimate the importance of nonverbal communication. Generally, nonverbal communication serves four purposes, and those are to express emotion, convey interpersonal attitudes, present one's personality, and to accompany verbal communication. So that being said, nonverbal communication can be used to repeat, conflict with, complement our verbal communication. It can be substituted for verbal communication, like nodding for yes. It can also be used to accent or amplify our verbal communication, to moderate or tone down our verbal communication, and to regulate verbal communication, like, for example, raising your hand to speak in class. So now we're going to talk about the three dimensions of nonverbal communication. And these reflect our basic responses to the environment and how we assign meaning to both verbal and nonverbal behavior. So those three dimensions are immediacy, which we react to things by evaluating them as positive or negative, good or bad. Status, so we perceive behaviors that indicate various aspects of status to us. And responsiveness, we perceive activity as being active or passive, which signals the intensity of our feelings about a person or subject. So now we'll talk about the codes of nonverbal communication. And those are kinesics, which is body movement, gestures, posture. In this, we use emblems, which are widely understood modes of nonverbal communication. For example, if I were to go like this, that means to be quiet. We also have illustrators, which are used to complement, enhance, substitute for verbal communication. We also have affect displays or facial expressions, like if I were to glare if I'm mad or to smile if I'm happy. like I talked about on the previous slide, we have regulators to control turn taking, like the hand raising. And we also have adapters or gestures to relieve tension. For example, if I was staring at my friend across the room and they noticed me staring at them, I could wave at them to break the tension of my weirdness for staring at them. We also have facial and eye behavior specifically. Oculesics is the study of eye behavior. We can use our facial and eye behavior to mask our emotions or to intensify or de-intensify our emotions. We also have vocalics or paralanguage, which refers to the tone, volume, articulation, pitch, rate of speech, and use of silence. We also have space and proxemics. In the US, we talk about 4 kind of zones of territory, and these differ culturally, but in the US, we consider the intimate zone to be 0 to 18 inches. So this is for only loved ones to be in our personal bubble. We have the personal zone, which is 18 inches to 4 feet, in which we probably would let close friends or people that we live with maybe be in that kind of space. We have the social zone from 4 to 12 feet, which is like people that we don't really know that well, but are comfortable being somewhat close to. And then we have the public zone, which is 12 or more feet, which is typically where we would feel most comfortable if strangers would remain. We also have touch and haptics. Again, in the US, we have functional professional touch, which is like handshaking and things like that. We have social and polite touch, such as like a pat on the back or a fist bump. We have friendship and warm touch, such as hugging when we haven't seen our friends in a while. And then we also have love and intimacy touch, which is more associated with sexual types of behavior. Our environment is also a big part of our nonverbal communication because we're influenced by architecture, design, doors, windows, the color of the room, lighting, smell, seating arrangements, temperature, and cleanliness. So these things all combine to create an atmosphere of warmth, privacy, familiarity, constraint, or distance, all which influence our nonverbal and verbal communication. And then finally, physical appearance. We can express certain parts of ourselves using artifacts like clothing, jewelry, piercings, tattoos, hair, etc. And also how kempt we are. If we were to come into like an office job or work setting like that in sweatpants and a t-shirt, we may be perceived negatively. So our physical appearance is a big part of our nonverbal communication as well. So now we'll talk about the content layer versus the relational layer of messages. And it is important to be able to differentiate between these 2 layers. So the content layer is the information being explicitly discussed. So in like a business and professional context, that could be like the project, task, or plan, or anything like that that you may be working on. The relational layer has more to do with how you feel about the other person, whether you like or dislike the person, feel in control or subordinate, feel comfortable or anxious, etc. And this can be communicated by word choice or nonverbal behaviors. So that is all for this video, but just like the last one, we'll recap real quick before I leave you. So first we went over nonverbal communication, which is both our words and verbal fillers like and like and things like that. We also have communication rules, which are shared understanding of what communication means and what constitutes appropriate communication given a context. And within that, we have regulative rules, which describe when, how, where, and whom to talk with about certain things, and constitutive rules, which define what communication means by prompting us to count certain kinds of communication. Then we moved on to nonverbal communication, which is communication other than written or spoken language that creates meaning for someone. Generally, it serves 4 purposes, which are to express emotion, convey interpersonal attitudes, present one's personality, or to accompany verbal communication. We also talked about the 3 dimensions of nonverbal communication, which are immediacy, status, and responsiveness. And then we finished up nonverbal communication talking about the codes of nonverbal communication, which are kinesics or body movement, gestures, and posture, facial and eye behavior, vocalics or paralanguage, space and proxemics, touch and haptics, the environment, and also physical appearance. And then we just wrapped up with discussing the content layer, which is the information being explicitly discussed, and the relational layer of messages, which have to do with how you feel about the other person, whether you like or dislike the other person, feel in control or subordinate, feel comfortable or anxious, etc. And we also discussed the importance of being able to differentiate between these 2 layers. So that is all for this video. Thank you for watching.